Today, we are here at the Delhi School of Business, a management education institute claiming to be empowered with technology-driven learning management systems and supporting educational infrastructure. The occasion is a day-long conclave on management education for modernizing India.
Hello everyone, I welcome you all to this very special management conclave. Delhi School of Business presents Management Education for Modernizing India. You're lucky enough to be sitting in the company of some special HR managers here who will be looking at the business management graduates in their company when they are hiring them. And we will try and understand from them what is that X factor that is required for them to hire people from business school. But before that, may I invite Dr. Rachel Davis, Dean of Delhi School of Business, to set the theme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Now we are going to talk about the specific kinds of requirements, expectations, etc., that human resources has for the kind of people that they interview so that they can recruit them into their companies. It's not just about what is lacking, it's about how their experiences have panned out as to what has worked as well as what has not worked out.
Thank you, ma'am. May I first welcome all our guests. Mr. Rajeev Bhadauria, Director, Group HR, Jindal Steel Private Limited. Ms. Sharmeen, Khalid, Executive Vice President, HR, Naukri.com. Mr. Sunil Goel, MD, Global Hunt, India. And your very own Dr. Rachel Davis. Let me first start with Naukri.com. I think almost everyone goes to a portal like that to be noticed. When you meet people and when they are freshers from MBA schools, what is that one thing that you're looking at?
One is obviously seriousness towards the job profile at hand, whether they are actually excited by the opportunity. And we have our own set of questions to assess that. The other is, will this person actually put his mind or his or her mind and soul to the work? And if he's passionate, in all probability he will. So therefore it's a, one thing leads to the other. And one thing which is becoming more and more important also is the ability to get along with people.
Right.
So in an organization, it's made up of people. And unfortunately in our education system, we are always taught how to come first in the class. We are taught very little of group work. Only when we come to B schools are we given group assignments.
True.
And we all know how we struggle with that because one person is not working hard and the other person has to take the whole load of it. So that is also one thing which we really look at.
Mr. Bhadauria, you come with a company that has legacy, and that has a work culture. How do you spot that person who will fit into your work culture by looking at a fresher?
Look, I'll actually act as a bull in a china shop, because it's all very easy actually to say that what is required is a prescription or a proscription. And I don't subscribe to either of the two. Because for this, actually we need to understand what is a B school supposed to be doing.
Right.
Particularly in the Indian context, we take B schools to be substitutes of finishing schools. So that's certainly not what B schools should be doing. You should also see that the business context has changed over the years.
True.
And as I was talking, in fact, some time back, what came to my mind was that the time period, as it has flown through in the last 10 to 12 years, has transformed the world altogether, and more so the business world. Globalization used to be the kind of business driver about 1998, and the technology driver was the Y2K bug. Now we have continual change, which is parameters changing no longer sequentially, but simultaneously. Continual change is the business driver. Globalization is just something of a good thing to be done and had. And in place of the Y2K bug, we have those IT tools, which are actually transforming the way the business is run. We have business performance platforms as dynamic through cloud computing processes in place of the static and sterile ERPs, which we are still state-of-the-art technologies. So what I mean to say is that the way business and technology is transforming the world, the whole business requirement is changing.
Right.
And so we'll be very transactional if we would be producing managers with a program thinking process. That, well, you are good for sales, you are good for marketing, you are good for HR, you should be smartly dressed, you should be smartly talking, you should be passionate about work. It's all very good. You have to have a positive attitude, that's fine. But what is more required is for business to succeed. So the parameters of business success have changed. The world today requires a competence. If I were to say one single competence which differentiates a student, and that too a B school student, the competence which is required is agility today. All the competencies apart, because agility is domain agnostic. It does not mean wherever you are, in whichever part of the world you are, whether in India, China, or the European economies which are still not coming out of recession, and the US. The point is that agility of systems and processes and agility is the competence that we have to exhibit, because the world has transformed.
Sunil, if I can ask you, we have students from various business schools that may be coming to you. When you meet freshers, and as you mentioned, you already know that they have academically succeeded and they have achieved these many marks, or they come from this background. Do you then give more weightage to the personality, or do you give more weightage to academia?
Not necessary that every CXO in an organizations or every functional heads only comes from IIMs or ISB or any such, or MIT or any institutions, right? This assessment comes on the job when the people start working, start getting into a day-to-day activity, and how do they excel. It's not like that today if I'm going to pass out from this, I'll get a manager chair and only assigning right to authority and the right to go and do that. So let's be on the ground very, very realistically. Once you get into any organization, first 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years is only and only learning. Believe me, even any largest FMCG companies hires the people, top rankers from, like even IIMs and so on. They've been sent to the, like sales job for first 6 months and 1 year to know the ground realities, right? If they don't know the ground reality, how will you do the strategic job sitting back at office? So it's very, very important that you should have acceptability to do a certain job. So it's the first important criteria what I look at, that you define your interest, because everyone excels if it's a job of his interest.
What I can make out from the discussion so far is that you're also looking for that quotient which is making students think more than the books and come across as individuals who are able to convey that. But how do you judge creativity when you meet a fresher?
Ultimately, my basic question is, staying true to the content of this discussion, that what is ultimately the purpose of a B school? Is it, in fact, as I said, is it only a finishing school? Or it should actually endow you. It should inculcate in you, internalize within you that competence of agility to deal with modern business. And modern businesses are fundamentally different. They have to be, in the 5 to 6 years back, I would have said that, transactional approach, linear thinking, linear extrapolation is dead, by the way. It has to be involving paradigm shifts. So creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship, dealing with ambiguity, dealing with uncertainty, having that agility to coping with this kind of adaptability, changing needs, where things are, parameters I would say, are changing no longer sequentially but simultaneously. Today there is a level playing field. Whosoever finds a new angle will be successful.
There has to be a certain level of maturity for the student, in the sense that they have to understand that the real world environment, first of all, is going to be different from what they have learnt in school. Particularly for the students who have not had prior work experience before going to business school. So they must realize that in real world things are more complex and they are bound to be different from what they have learned. But having said that, their knowledge is applicable in the real world, but they must have the patience to deal with the real world issues that come up.
When you are interacting with somebody who is from a business school from the faculty point of view or management, what do you tell them? What are you looking at from looking at freshers? I mean, what are the things that you tell them? Okay, these are the things that I want. Please give me only those students.
One is that what you have ready and what all fit to my bucket. That becomes, like whatever fits into your, game plan. Second, you say when you meet them, at least 6 months or a year advance, you always put them across that we need, these are the 6 skills in the individual. So these are the 10 skills among the individuals. And we have even advised the companies that if you are going to look at a hire from the campus, why don't you train them for a year advance at management institutes?
Interesting.
You open your lab inside the institute, send your managers on a weekly visit, train them as per your need, and then you hire because that's a ready skills for you.
True.
So it's a win-win situation for both the sides.
Sharmeen, I would ask you, are there specific social programs that introduce a certain person to the work culture of a company?
Yes, we have, we have orientation programs in which we in a formal manner try to convey to them what the softer aspects of the organization are, what the values of the organization are, what is the culture, what are, appreciable behaviors, what are behaviors which we do not appreciate, and so on and so forth. We also try to introduce them to, the more senior people in the organization with whom they may not, work directly on a day-to-day basis, but they get an opportunity to interact with them, to learn more from them. So that's step 1. Step 2 is more related to the job kind of an orientation. So there are internal training modules which are made on product knowledge, what are the various products.
I want to shift attention to work culture. Where has this term come from, and why does work culture differ from one organization to another?
See, culture is a multifaceted term, and it comes out of values, the ways you think, the way you work, the kind of skills that we exhibit, the success factors, the stage at where the business is, at which stage of progression, forward-looking, progressive, and future-proof ultimately. That's the scale at which the organizations progress. In today's context, in the democratized work environment, the whole concept has to be understood in the context of changing the very notion of leadership. Leadership does not mean that you are placed top in the hierarchy.
Right.
Leadership has become, as Steve Jobs was working around, that leadership works around intersection of technology and humanity. And that gives you the basic flavor of what leadership today means. It is more a diffused mental state, an attitude which pervades all across the organization of certain beliefs, factors, and kind of, the dynamics which work in the new business arena.
Right.
Ultimately, the B school will have to prepare you for understanding of business, a culture of business, and there, business prudence, canons of financial commercial propriety, which are domain agnostic, which are organizational agnostic. It is that which the B schools have to prepare you for. And so the culture that follows in an organization is basically dependent on the stage at which you are. You go, you make certain changes. There would be some kind of a stage at which the organization is, and because of which the various value system, the policies, the regulations, and the business dynamics would determine, how the larger culture is all about. But culture is never stagnant. It keeps on changing and continually gets, adapting, upgrading, modifying, and kind of, coming to terms with reality as things move.
Dr. Davis, keeping in mind all the factors that have been brought up in this discussion, traditional curriculum does not account for development of any of these skills in a traditional way if we look at B schools. What is the challenge that comes in defining a curriculum which has, say, a subject where these skills are developed? We talk about corporate socialization, acculturation skills, leadership development, group working. How do you develop this in your students?
There will be workshops which will go on right through the 2 years that they are here. And some people will have to repeat some workshops, and some people may be, allowed not to take one and has to take something else. The academic component of what they study, they will use bits and pieces over a long period of time. But the behavior and attitude and communication, they will use all of these from day one onwards. Sure. When they hit the ground, this is what is going to go into play, because they'll have to interact with people, they'll have to talk, they'll have to communicate, they will have to participate in discussions. And if they know how to do these properly, because they were made aware of the problem areas, how to solve them, just like anybody's family, for instance. what makes a family have a strong culture or a strong family is that they're able to provide many solutions to the problems of their children's lives, or they might meet in the future. So they prepare that child for a future. They anticipate the issues, which is what we have to do. And we have to give them potential solutions that are workable for them. See, the risk is low, the costs are low, but they will learn it in the kind of projects that they undertake. For instance, and I don't want to take too long about this, is there are a number of, I don't want to call them community service projects, but projects that students may be interested in. They have to be interested in it for themselves. Whether it is an educational project or a green project or whatever it may be, sewing clothes, who knows. They have to manage an organizational context, work in a group, and have a 2-year time, lay out a business plan, hopefully make some money, but not necessarily so because they may be making social product. We want to see that because then they have 2 years work experience of achieving the kinds of competencies you're talking about.
Let us move forward. May I now invite the chairman of Vivekananda Institute of Professional Studies and Delhi School of Business, Dr. S.C. Watts, for his final thoughts on this special conclave. Sir.
Thank you, CNN-IBN. We need to modernize India, and we need to modernize India through business education. Two things that need to be built: capacity building and capability building. So we're very clear about our objectives, and our endeavor shall be to see that the future managers have the agility, as rightly mentioned by Mr. Bhadauria, that it has to be an out-of-the-box thinking. You need to be agile, you need to be adaptable, and there has to be a creativity. You need to be more contemplative. You need to be competing every time under the changing environment. So adaptability is the buzzword. Agility is another buzzword. And we will, as a Delhi School of Business, will do capacity building and capability building both. Thank you, CNN-IBN. And thank you, panelists.
Thank you, sir, for summing up the conclave. I thank you all for being such a lovely audience, and I thank my esteemed panel for taking out their valuable time. I hope you enjoyed this special management conclave. Thank you for joining us.